You see, I never ever believed that I'm a change maker. I hated the term leadership. I saw it as arrogant. I still kind of don't like the term expert. I always say I'm a professional, I'm a specialist, but I'm not an expert. And I'm not against people using it, but I don't like the term. So I struggled with being called a leader or a change maker or a change champion. And irony, I'm running a show called Unleash Leaders of Change. So you can imagine I've come a long way from literally hating these terms to actually thinking, hey, I need to recognize some change leaders who are actually unleashing some great, fantastic, progressive changes in our world. In this entire journey, which I will say for me started at age 13, what I can call as me, without even realizing being a change maker, is back home at age 13, I founded a non-profit organization to help women from saving them from abuse, especially in the culture I come from. There's a very bad tradition that still goes on, which is all about dowry, and women are beaten, abused, exploited, harassed, even burnt alive. It still happens. It's not something I can say used to happen or is a history. It still happens. Yes, maybe not as much as it used to, but if it's even happening to one woman, it's bad. And at age 13, I heard something about that. In somebody was being harassed, and she was actually burnt. She had third-degree burns, and it was awful. And as a 13-year-old, I asked my parents, what can we do? Can I do something? Can we find an organization where we can fight for these women? Long story short, we helped her in in rescuing her from her abusive husband and in-laws. And that's where my journey started. But since then, till at least the age of 25, I never believed I was a change maker. So I could go into this long, but do you believe you are a change maker? Are change makers born, or do we become a change maker? Is everybody a change maker? Now, we're going to have some interesting conversation about this because people I love, we sometimes have disagreements or different views, and I love them for that. So let me bring two of my guests today. I know you were expecting one, but I just got the bonus. So, I am great like that. I'm a leader like that. No, BS. I'm just joking. But it just happened, and these two lovely ladies are my love. So here I bring Patti Talbot and Joanna Rawbone. Hey, ladies, how you going?
Wonderful to be with you, Sebastian.
Really good. Thank you.
It's an honor to have you, and especially for you doing this last minute, Joanna. I absolutely am grateful for that. You're probably sitting in your couch or laying in the bed and like, hey, do you want to join? Let's do this. So I guess that's leadership as well, right? So for people who do not know you yet, if I can go around the room, Patti, if you don't mind telling people a little bit about you, who you are, what you do.
All right, sure. Well, I've been an educator my whole professional career, elementary, secondary, graduate school, and so forth, and retired a few years ago and have been on a journey to discover what it means to be a change maker, because these people that show up in big ways, like that story that you just shared, Sebastian, that's amazing. As a 13-year-old, people like you fascinate me. So I've been on this journey to find out what it is to be a change maker and how I can be of service in helping to develop the change maker attributes in as many of us as possible so that we can make the world a better place. So that's me.
I love that. Joanna, let's find out a little bit about you as well.
Hi, yes, thank you. So I can't profess to have got into realizing I was a change maker as early as 13. And as Patti's story. I haven't actually been, I don't think, a change maker for all my professional career. But there was a point in my career when I realized that what I was doing, I'm a trainer, coach, facilitator that within corporates initially, and then running my own business since 1994. And I remember my very first business card that I had created when I set up my own business in 94 said change agent. And I realized at that point that what I was doing was helping people navigate and make the changes that were either required or desired. And then blow me down if I didn't then go on and do a master's degree that was called Change Agent Skills and Strategies. So I'm kind of officially one now as well, but in my heart and in my soul, I'm one too.
Well, isn't that fun? Because I think all what we're all sharing is, in some way, we didn't realize what we're capable of. And then we found our calling, found our purpose. And I guess working on that purpose makes you a change maker, because you're trying to change something that's can be better, that can improve the world. Speaking of which, and a little fun disagreement, Patti, you and I have. So I say, I question, say, change makers, are we born change makers? And you have a little different perspective on that. So that's my question, really. Is everybody a change maker? Are we all born change makers and we don't realize that? Or how do we know that we are a change maker? Or, as my dad used to say, some people just live to exist and nothing more.
So you want me to take that first, or because you and I have this
Yes.
disagreement?
Yes, please.
It's only
Yes,
really
please.
it's a semantic disagreement. I really think we are really on the same page with this. But when I first started digging into the research around what it means to be a change maker, and I would be talking to people about this, I would hear two things really that I came to disagree with. One is everybody is a change maker just by living and breathing and walking around, because obviously we affect our environment. From the moment we're born, or even before we're born, we are changing things by our mere existence. So in that sense, it's true. But my work has been about how do you become one on purpose. And I also make a distinction between what it means to be a good person who is changing things by being a good person, and a change maker in the global sense requires some intentionality around it. But the other thing that sometimes people say is I can't be a change maker. And I also disagree with that, because I certainly believe that every human has the capacity to develop the skills and dispositions once they have the will to make positive change that makes a bigger difference. So it's really both of those things. We're not automatically a change maker, but we can be, but we have to do it on purpose. We're not hearing it. Yeah.
Yeah. One change I need to make is to remember to unmute myself every time. So I think what I was saying is, I believe it's pretty much what we can change about the leadership as well, because at the end of the day, there are some born leaders. There are people who can become leaders. It is about, exactly as you said, kind of getting there. And I'm glad that you're actually doing something to help these change makers and help people become change makers from the skills and the passions that they have. Coming to passions, Joanna, you're passionate about introverts flourishing. And,
I am.
that's your brand. That's everything you talk about. When and how did that start?
I didn't find out until my 30s that what made me different was that I identified as an introvert. I knew I was different, but not how I was different. And unfortunately, all that happened after that is then I realized it was by taking a Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is often the way many introverts find out that that's what makes them different. But then all it did was highlight the difference between me and somebody who identifies as an extrovert. And I looked around at all my peers and colleagues and realized that actually that was what was expected of me in my role as a trainer, to be a big personality, to be kind of entertaining, to be somebody who was really outgoing. And it wasn't until I imitated that. I pretended to be more extroverted for actually over 2 decades until I hit burnout. And that was when that kernel of purpose and passion really got ignited in me, that said, this isn't right. You know, why are we kind of forcing people to be something they're not, just to fit in with some expectation of society, of business, of education, whatever it happens to be? So it was about 5 years ago, nearly 6 now, that Flourishing Introverts was born, and I am on a mission to shift the extroversion bias so that introverts can flourish authentically and be the best version of themselves.
And I can literally vouch for everything you just said, because, oh my God, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to pretend that I am on the life of the party. I've done that. Funny enough, until 30s, I've done that, to
Yeah.
be the life of the party, pretend that I love being there, and be so exhausted that the only thing I did not have in that party was fun, because I was just tired. I was just internally just telling myself, this is going to be over in just the next few hours. You can do this. So I can relate to that. Now, being a change maker does come with some challenges, and I specifically want to focus on psychological and emotional challenges, because most of us change makers, we follow a passion that's not an easy one for us, because I think it actually originates from something we do not like that's happening around us, something that we do not agree with, and we feel like we can do better. So, Patti, how do you feel, being a change maker impacts our own mental health, and what can we do about taking care of ourselves in the process?
Yeah. Well, the Changemaker framework that I've developed has 4 quadrants in it. And one of those quadrants is doing. And doing this is about action orientation and problem solving and being creative and innovative and persevering, working. The problem is that many change makers get stuck only in the doing and forget the being, the beingness piece of it, and the reflectiveness piece of it that we all need in order to maintain our well-being and our sense of self. And it's so important. And I've had a number of guests on my own show recently that have spoken to this need to really do the self-care that's necessary, because as doers, and a lot of change makers, I find, are what I think is like what you're describing, Szebastian, as a 13-year-old, a highly sensitive young person who feels passionate about doing something. And an empath, probably. We didn't necessarily call it that back then, but I can relate to that part, even though I didn't take action the way you did as a young person. But that tendency to be highly sensitive and action-oriented and empathic toward the whole world is a recipe for burnout, and what Joanna was describing that happened to her, in addition to denying your own identity as an extrovert, as an introvert in an extrovert world. So when you put that together, that's a recipe for burnout and disillusionment among really wonderful, well-intentioned people who are doing their very best to show up again and again. So when you ask me what to do about it, it is really to not discount the importance of knowing yourself, valuing yourself, figuring out in your core who you are, where you come from, what's important to you, and then replenishment again and again and again. So, coming back to all the strategies of self-care and mindfulness and communing with nature, and doing it every day on purpose, intentionally, as part of what the life of a change maker requires, not just living on the I got to do it, because we must do it together. And one of the really important parts of the definition that I have adopted around what it means to be a change maker is the work with others part as well, because you cannot do it alone. And that's why it's been so wonderful to meet the two of you among so many other wonderful change makers in the world, because you really do sustain me when I get to that what do I think I'm doing? Who do I think I am? This is exhausting, and you remind me in community that it's okay. It's a step at a time, and taking time for self is critical.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that I take away from this is the importance of, I'm going to change the word a little bit here, not just call it peer support, but the importance of peer work together and peer presence together. Because support is still a little bit passive in my view, but working together, as you're saying, it does take a lot of burden away from one single person, and the sense of guilt, because as an empath, that's one thing we live with. If you're not helping, if you're not doing something where we can help, we think we can. We probably can't because we're burnt out and we're ignoring that what's happening to us. But we try to, we feel like, oh, I could have done something. I'm not taking an action. And that peer presence is the right time to re-energize ourselves, and also somebody raising hand, hey, go take rest, go take some time, and I'm here for you. I'm going to do something, and while you recharge and everything. Speaking of recharge, Joanna, I have to ask you, this guilt that we carry, and as an introvert, that extra layer that gets added, because we've always been told, oh, you're quiet, you're not participating, you're not, uh, what's going on in your mind? No, there's something going on. All those accusations that we live with. And then we carry this guilt that I have to be an extrovert. If I want to make a change, I need to be loud and visible and dancing and all that. But that's not necessarily true, right? Whether you're introvert or not, do I have to be loud to be a change maker?
No, absolutely. And it's often the quietest voice in the room that delivers the most powerful message. And that's one of the things that I talked about in my TEDx is the fact that, the voices that we hear all the time, we almost become immune to them. But it's those that we hear less frequently and maybe are softer in tone that all of a sudden we find ourselves leaning forward, leaning into the message and really paying attention to what's being said. And I think one of the things that I know about me as a change maker and a leader, so I'm going to pick up on the leadership here thing again, Szebastian, is that the type of leadership that I practice is servant leadership. And that can also lead me on a path to burnout, because the way I lead is by serving others. I'm always interested in what is it they need. So I need to have some really clear boundaries in place so that I don't overserve. I also need to have those really strong accountability buddies and collaborators working with me who are going to give me a nudge every now and again and say, Joe, you need to take a break. So we don't need to be loud. We don't need to be, the one who's always speaking. And in fact, what we need to do, back to Patti's being, I think, is that we need to demonstrate this change leadership rather than just talk about it. There's too much talking in the world and actually not enough heart-centered action. So for me, it's also about walking my talk. It's about demonstrating what I really mean. And that may mean turning down conversations. So yes, I'm here. I could have gone to bed because it's nighttime here. But actually, because I love you too, I wanted to be here. I wanted to be part of this conversation. And that's what I'm talking about with the collaboration as well. We are part of this conversation, and the ripples that we're creating will actually impact far and wide.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that. And, I'm grateful that you just joined it in the last minute invite. I absolutely love that. And I think the biggest thing that I like in this whole conversation so far is that at the end of the day, it is a balance. I'm going to go back, Patti, to your beingness, that it is the balance between the doing and the being that is so important. And as you said, Joanna, that boundary, recognizing the boundary, maintaining that boundary, being able to say no, being able to cut down on what's, beyond my capability, is impacting me negatively or in some shape or form, actually making my change making work ineffective, because I'm just doing, not recharging, not evaluating, not really going beyond the action only. And you can get lost in that. So the question here is, Patti, if you are lost, if you are feeling lost, if you're feeling exhausted, and if you feel like, what am I doing wrong? Why is the change not happening? Because that's one of the things that frustrates people. I'm doing so much, but I don't see the change that I wanted to. How do I counter and manage that feeling? And what can we do about that? Because it is disappointing when we feel that way.
Yeah, it really is. And that's a really great question and a very complex question, Szebastian, because I think it is about, first of all, as I said, self-care. Second of all, as we've all said, that community of support and mutual work together. And also, I think coming back to that reflection, however you choose to do that. I have a journaling practice and a meditation practice that really serve and support me in and helping me to reevaluate every single day. I often say, my little framework for Changemakers is not only my passion that I preach to the world, but it's also my daily schedule. I make sure that every day I am taking time for being and doing and connecting and reflecting internally, as well as, what I want the world to see, external reflection. So it helps me just manage my day. And so the reflecting piece of that is in the sense of regrouping and whatever you consider your higher power, the cosmos or God or whatever, reconnecting with what you believe your divine purpose on earth is. And it's when we get lost in our humanity, because we do wring our hands at the news, and we wring our hands at the desperation and the suffering, and that is very much a part of the human world. And I love Joanna's focus on servant leadership, because that's another area that I think we share. That's been my way of being, and the way I was even raised is in service is the way you live your life while you're here. But unless there's some kind of framework, and your framework doesn't have to be my framework. It doesn't have to be about religion. It doesn't have to be about whatever universal design, whatever it is, but some kind of grounding structure that gives you some kind of connection to consciousness, that I am here, but I am part of something bigger, and I'm only one piece of that something bigger. But my little piece can be like an atom, very, very powerful in its own way. And by just coming back to that belief system, structure, daily practice, whatever you want to call it, will sustain you. I believe it certainly sustains me and helps me show up again and again and again every day, thinking, okay, what's mine to do today? What's mine not to do today? and where can I go for support, inspiration, when I need to be held up too, and reminded, that we keep on trucking, but we won't do it unless we have that supportive community around us. It's about what you read, about what you consume, who you associate with, and what you decide to, how you decide to arrange your days. And that's a long-winded, roundabout answer, but it's just such a complex question. And we each have to figure out for ourselves what does sustain us and keep us going. And that's kind of my formula for it.
No, absolutely. And I agree with, I love your whole quadrant, because it's, the 4 quadrants that you have, they actually do help bring a whole picture, actually complete a picture for change making. And I strongly recommend, if you haven't checked out, go and check the work Patti is doing, because it actually makes a lot of sense in change making. It actually helps you get a clear picture and bring the balance that I think we need. And Joanna, I'm going to repeat the same question a little bit differently. same thing, we see this disappointment. We feel like, okay, I'm doing so much, it's not really making a change. And again, because you're an introvert, specialist, I do take from that angle. We think a lot inside, so even the disappointment kind of stays inside. Nobody knows. An extrovert will somehow express and all that, but we introverts tend to either speak when we're really frustrated and it all comes down as a big blast, like, okay, so that's what I've been keeping with me and now deal with it. Or we just, I hate to use the term, but we keep following in ourselves because we just think like, well, nothing is happening. How do you balance that as a person who's not only an empath, not only highly sensitive, but also an introvert who doesn't really want to always talk about it? So how do you balance that?
Again, it is a really complex issue. And if you saw me reaching across, it was because I was reading a book earlier today, and I'm going to read the sentence that I read that just kind of was triggered when I heard Patti talking, because it said, just because you feel like it's your destiny doesn't mean it will be smooth sailing. And that's something that I really need to remind myself of, because this is what feels like my life's purpose now. I can imagine me doing this until I turn my toes up. It's not like, okay, I'm going to do this for a year and then retire. But there is this frustration of keep delivering the message and it feeling like it's not going anywhere. And one of the things I've had to learn is some resilience, or more resilience, in that if people say no, they're not rejecting me. They're not even necessarily rejecting the message. Maybe they're just not ready to hear it yet. So that's, just because I get some pushbacks doesn't mean I should stop delivering the message or I should change my message. So that's the first thing, is a bit of resilience. And the other is I had to stop taking things personally. So when people did say no, or there was a LinkedIn post that one of my big heroes, Tim Clark, who does all the work around psychological safety. I'm such a big fan of his work. And he posted up, which I had to repost, a post about psychological safety for introverts. And I thought, wow, someone that I admire so much adding to this conversation. I was kind of blown away. And as I was reading the comments that people were making, I came across this one comment. And isn't it funny how we can ignore all of the others and focus on the one comment? And the one comment was daycare for adults. And I felt myself absolutely seething at that, because I thought, well, this guy was a business owner, so therefore he's a leader. And that's what he thinks creating psychological safety for introverts is, kind of, daycare for us. But in a way, that also then fires me up. So it reignites my passion and my purpose and reminds me why I'm doing this, because there are some people out there who don't get it yet. And I imagine that there will be people out there who don't get it after I've long gone from this earth.
Absolutely.
Because this is such a big thing. So it is back to being really clear about why I'm doing this, because it isn't always going to be easy. It's not always going to be smooth sailing. There are going to be peaks and troughs. And if I'm really committed to this, I need to find a way to replenish, to make sure I'm looking after me, and that I'm not giving up on this message, that I'm not actually bailing out or stopping serving those people who I know I can serve.
Absolutely love that. And, I exactly kind of relate to the example that you gave. Number one, we're human beings. We tend to focus on the negative. Like, why is somebody saying that? Because it's hurtful, it's offensive. But here's the thing. I see so many leaders, so-called leaders, I call them, who are supposed to be leading teams, inspiring their organization, helping clients, who actually make these kind of really appalling comments.
Yeah.
uh, they're probably just trolling and just having fun in their mind, but they don't understand the impact that it has on somebody else. And I'm going to share something totally on a different tangent. I was on a dating app and somebody made really nasty comment about my looks and all that. Doesn't bother me, but I took the time to speak to that person and said, "Do you realize I am a person who is not affected by this? I have a thick skin. I don't care what you want to say. You can say 10 more things, and I'm just going to still smile. I'll still send you a smiley emoji and still say, okay, thanks. Anything else?" But there's somebody out there who might listen to exactly what you said, and they could go and take their life. That's all the difference is how a person is, what state of mind they're in, what they're dealing with, how they have grown up, what environment they're in. One single bad comment could literally take a life. And we have, there's so many cases
Yeah.
internationally known. We have so many campaigns going on. I mean, it's still a big issue. So that's something I think in change making I find very challenging, when you see disappointing comments like this coming from responsible people, not from somebody who's just joined LinkedIn or who's just joined social media
Yeah.
or is 15, 16 and, going through their hormonal changes. None of that. People who are seasoned, again, I hate to use the term in this context, leaders, but they're not really leading, right? One
May
thing
I-
that always, please go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just your example there of someone with an unkind comment and your response to that made me think of something that I saw on Facebook the other day that I thought was I responded to it. It was a photograph of several people on a bus who were on their phones, and there was an elderly lady who was bent over standing up, and the people were oblivious to the elderly lady. And then there was someone who took the picture of that and sent it, and they were like, sending this out on Facebook to shame those people. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, shame on those people. But then I said, and I typed in there, I said, I surely hope the person who took this picture did something besides take the picture to publicly shame those people. I really hope that person, I'm hoping they weren't seated, but that they could go over and say, pardon me, you probably haven't noticed, but this lady could really use a seat. Could one of you good people do that right now? And it just made me think about the impact of small things we can do in the moment to make a change. And the way that you handled that person was that kind of response, a teachable moment, right? To say to this person who was being snarky and rude or whatever, or those people who are being oblivious, because we can take action without. I've been accused of being a school teacher always because I'll sometimes speak up, but I do think it's in those moments, if we can find a gentle way to put another frame on something. And anyway, I just want to thank you for doing that, because someone else probably reaps the benefit, hopefully someone else's, and we do have those opportunities to make changes in the moment.
I agree with that, Patti. I think, and I've been in that position before, witnessing pictures and videos like this, and I'm thinking, hang on, you're taking that video, but what are you doing about this, right? And we are actually living in a culture where something awful is happening, and a lot of people are going live, but I don't see a lot of people speaking up and saying, well, this is wrong. And there are some really awful things that I've seen that just shocks my soul. Having said that, these teachable moments have taught me things about myself where I feel like, okay, why am I getting offended? There have been times where I've been offended about seeing some comment or something like that, and feeling like I've been working so hard on this for changing people's mind, and people still do that. But Joanna, as you said, it's always going to be there, even after we're gone. Because again, generations are changing, people are coming and going. It's a nonstop cycle, and not everybody. no matter what we try, we'll never be able to touch all the 7.5 billion or whatever, however number we are. But I think that is what change making is, to constantly keep working on that, because we do live in this life where good and bad exist together, and that's how we know it's good and bad. Um, One thing that I do find that I have learned now is when I see a comment like that, I pause a little, because I used to react. I used to just go, how, not in those words, but I just used to feel like, how dare you? Do you even realize, what's this doing to people? And really coming from a place of getting very offended. And I find, change maker or not, when you're trying to change people's mind, if you walk in with an offended mindset, with a mindset to pretty much combative mindset, like how dare you, it doesn't work, because now you're already fighting. You're probably, your choice of words, your tone of voice, all of that is already so raised that the other person who's already against your views is not going to listen to you at all. They've just won. They're like, see,
Yeah.
you just proved my point. What I've learned is sit with it for 30 seconds. Just give yourself 30 seconds and read it 3 times and go, have I read this right? Do I understand? I go, a few comments up and down and see what are they responding to, what exactly is happening. Something like this happened yesterday. I almost reacted to something and I saw, hang on, let me read that again and think of different grammatical things. Maybe they didn't put a comma, and that's exactly what it was. They didn't put a comma, it changes the meaning. And if I had reacted, I would have been making a supporter walk away from something that they were supporting. So what I did instead was I went to them and said, I privately messaged them, hey, you posted this. I'm not really sure what you mean. Do you mean this? I also added my meaning as well to clarify. And I'm glad I did. They explained what they meant. And they realized, why do you think I meant anything else? And they actually went ahead and edited their comment, and all that makes a lot of difference. And I think that's part of change making as well, to clarify. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is get curious, rather than judging.
Say, my 9-year-old grandson would say, grammar saves lives, go.
It does.
Grammar saves lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, that
And especially
critical.
When you're coming from different cultures, different experiences, I think it's important to actually get curious and actually ask, what do you mean? Can you explain? Even instead of saying, what do you mean? Say, hey, do you mind clarifying what you mean by that? Because I may not be understanding that right. Because I think the first thing is, it makes people a little bit more friendly, and they feel like you want to hear them. Yes. Speaking about hearing them, change making is such a process that you come across so many objections. There are so many barriers. There are so many walls to climb. There are so many mountains to, get on top of. We've already talked about balance, taking care of yourself. But sometimes you're almost there. You almost see the difference happening. And then you get exhausted right a minute before, when you're about to reach there. Have you, both of you, have you ever experienced that? And if you have, how did you remind yourself, only this much is left? The elephant is gone. It's just the tail that I need to, get across the tree. So how did you guys get there? Patti, if you want to start with that.
Well, I would say I haven't gotten there yet. So
I'm glad.
Yeah, right. I haven't gotten there yet, but I keep going because, I have people like you around me. And, but I do think it's that, Angela Duckworth has the book Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. And I really think it's that is, we need rest in order to persevere. We need passion in order to persevere. But it's that coming back to remembering within ourselves, with the help of other people, by surrounding ourselves with the right messaging, and and admitting when we're just feeling lost and taking a step back, because both of I took a kind of a sabbatical for the month of August and wandered around the world and dipped my toes in the water and stared at a whole lot of flames in a fire. And reconnecting with nature is the way to go to help you kind of put your life in perspective, remember your sense of humor about your humanity and our limits of our humanity, and then show up to carry on. So that's true for me, whether I'm at that almost space, which I feel like I've gotten to that almost space a lot, but I don't really expect to arrive at the change I want to see. I just hope that I can, every day live to serve another day and another day and another day while I'm here to do so. And I shared a line from a movie with you recently, Szebastian. One of my favorite movies is The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, if you've seen it. And the line from that movie that I will always remember is, everything will be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, it's not the end. And so little funny things like that kind of keep me going. So
Looks
I
like a
love
movie I want to watch, but just
yes,
because
you would
I'm
love it. You'd love it, love it.
absolutely, but just because I'm a huge fan, air condition, and everything else of red, white, and royal blue, I'm just gonna say no. That's the only movie everybody should watch. I'm not advertising, guys. It's just a movie I'm in love with.
Great. I watched it
Something,
on your recommendation. I did enjoy it.
something. So I haven't expected something like that in mainstream media. So that's a big change in the world as well. Speaking of change, and when I saw the movie, I was like, wow, it's really happening. It's happening in my lifetime. I am actually, I say I because that's how most of us queer people feel. I'm actually the main character right now.
Mm.
The movie made me feel like, wow, can that happen? Is it really happening? So and not just that, being the number one movie for last 3 weeks, highest rating and everything, and getting love from everywhere else. So I think that's part of change making as well. It may seem like I'm talking about just my LGBT community, but that's what I'm talking about. That it felt so good to witness a change right in front of me, that recognizes me, that honors me, that celebrates me. And all of us feel a little Alex and a little Henry and just go like, oh my God, that's how I felt. That's what I went through. So, and coming back to the question, Joanna, so when you reach that little last point and get like, oh my God, how do you balance that? Or have you been
Well,
there?
I'm kind of with Patti on this, and that, I don't know that I've ever been this close to the end, because I don't think I will get to the end. But what I am really clear on, and this really became apparent when Patti was talking, is that what I do in that moment is I dig in. I don't push on. And by dig in, what I mean is I'll set up a kind of a base camp wherever I am, and just kind of just replenish again, just recharge my batteries, get ready for the next climb that I'm going to do. Because it's not like when I get this close, if I don't push on, I'm going to go all the way back down to the bottom. It's not a game of snakes and ladders. What it means is when I get really close, what I need to make sure that I've got the energy that I need, that I've got the focus that I need to go that next step. And as I say, I don't think it's the end, but it's to go the next step. So for me, it's about digging in that moment and just kind of finding a hollow in which to just be for a while and replenish, ready for the next step.
I absolutely love that. That kind of brings us to the conclusion as well. But I do want to say, really, it is about enjoying the journey. It is about being in the journey. We say that about life as well, but same applies on change making as well. Rather than trying to be at the destination, understand the the whole journey is a destination in different milestones. Every small change you're making. One thing that a couple of examples I want to share. I deal with a lot of trolls, and what I do is rather than getting bothered or angry, I message them and say, okay, so why do you feel like that? I kind of try and engage them in a conversation. I
Mm.
don't always succeed, but I can happily say 6 out of 10 people listen. They want to know. Sometimes it's because of their ego, sometimes it's because they want to prove something. But when you are ready to let them talk and then you ask them counter questions, people listen. I have
Yeah.
had people change their minds on things that I could not believe they will. And I think it is again about persevering, about knowing that you can't change everybody, you can't change everything, but if you can change one mind and you can make one person think and do better things, that's a big change, because now they're going to go and impact somebody else. They might go and say to somebody else, to their parents, to their siblings, and say, well, you always taught me this, but that's not how it is. So that change making is becoming a ripple that's affecting everybody
Yeah.
else. But another thing that I feel is this entire process, something that Patti talks about is giving yourself grace. You're not always going to do everything right. You're not always going to be perfect. You're not always going to
Yeah.
make it there. You just have to, again, believe in that journey, that what you're doing, the purpose you're working on, the smallest change is worth it. 4 years ago in my shows, I started saying, for my guests, if you're coming for the viewers, don't. If you're coming for the statistics, don't. I come with the mind that if anybody listens to our conversation, if one person just stops for a second and says, huh, I didn't think of it that way, that's the change. And
Yeah.
Joanna, you just reacted that Patti said something, you learned something, you realized something. That's what it is. It just takes one moment. It just takes
Yeah.
one instance, and that can change things. It has happened to me. Um,
Mhm.
I do call myself a recovering racist. I was a racist. I did not know that. I was 24 years old when I first ever realized that I'm a racist. And the first reaction was like, what are you talking about? How can I be racist? I'm brown, right? Because that's what you think. We
Yeah.
think racism is just white and brown, or white or black and all that. But without going long into the story, I refused to work with somebody of a specific origin because they were of that origin, because of the political enmity my country of origin and their country of origin had living in Australia. None of that enmity with us. But I simply said to my teacher, I'm not going to work with this person because he's so and so. He belongs to this country.
Mhm.
That person challenged me. And that's what I call real change making. He said, come to my family, come to my home for 30 minutes. Just spend some time with us. If after that you still don't want to work on the project with me, I will even change my class. I will change my
Wow.
course. And my ego and my racism, I will still say it was very, very racist mindset, because I just decided I'm not going to work with so and so. I took it as a challenge, not as something I wanted to learn, but as something to prove him wrong, that, oh yeah, I know you guys are going to be bad, so sure, let's go to your home. It took me less than 5 minutes inside his home, meeting his family. I was in tears. Do you know what? There was nothing different between us. We ate the same food, we wore the same clothes, we spoke the
Mm.
same language, we have the same cultures, we greeted our elders the same way.
Mhm.
Our elders treated children the exact same way that how I was raised, how my parents raised me, what respect is, what kindness is. And in 5 minutes, I was crying. I was quite upset with myself that how did I not see this?
Mhm.
And unfortunately, politics is one of those things that brainwashes you. I grew up in a very progressive family, but you still hear certain things
Right.
and you don't even know when that becomes part of your thinking. And to me, that was a big change making moment, because here I was hating somebody just for being where they were born. And next thing, the next 4 semesters, we were the best friends. And I think that's what one single person's change, I don't know how much but since then, my view on what racism really is much deeper than just black or white. It's so much more.
Mm.
And I think that affects everything. Anyway,
And
I've gone into a long.
may I just say, you've just given such a beautiful example of how storytelling is important change-making work too.
Yeah.
Telling our own
Absolutely.
stories of our own foibles in life, our mistakes, that people learn from that, and they learn from your example of humility through your learning. So thank you for sharing that story and for giving such a great example of storytelling as change-making.
Thank you. Well, that makes us, we are finally at the time of conclusion. So, Joanna, I'm going to go with you first. What's the one message you have for whether introverts or not, anybody else in change making? Literally anything you want to talk about that people should remember and focus on when they are trying to be a change maker, or if they get exhausted, anything.
Just the one thing. Something I'm talking about and learning about quite a lot at the moment, actually, which is compassionate honesty. So I would encourage change makers to really practice and get comfortable with compassionate honesty.
I love that.
Beautiful.
And Patti.
Yeah. I think the heart of my message is that you don't have to be any special kind of person to be a change maker. You just have to be willing to do the work on yourself and show up and do the work for yourself and let the world see what you stand for again and again and again, and get the rest you need in between, and keep showing up.
Absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. Well, thank you, ladies. For being part of this really amazing episode. It all was impromptu, but you made it beautiful. You are beautiful inside and out. So I'm really, really grateful and honored to be in this company. And I hope we get to do this again and again. Can I literally keep you guys 24 hours here so that we just keep doing this?
I think you all need some rest. I'm always really impressed with the late hours that you all keep. One of my self-care things is not that. So you impressed me.
Fair enough.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. I'll be meeting you right after this show. So give me just a minute. I'll close the show and I'll be with you guys. So guys, that was Patti. And well, Patti was supposed to be the bonus influencer who was going to talk about change making. And we got double bonus with Joanna. So how good is that? I think the biggest takeaway for me is being kind to yourself is very, very important in change making. Being compassionate to yourself, give yourself grace, and knowing the boundaries, as Joanna and Patti all shared, knowing when to say no, taking care of yourself, not beating yourself over something you couldn't do. And the biggest part is change making is not about changing everything right now, right here in one instant. It is a process. It is an ongoing thing. The world's going to keep happening. Generations will change. And, well, the climate is changing. So much is changing. There are so many negative things we can focus on. But really, it's about what you can do right now, how much you can do, and knowing how to recharge, taking care of yourself, and letting others share the burden with you, allowing others to help you, to join you in your change-making journey is what it's all about. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Once again, I'm Szebastian Onne, the Almost Naked CEO. I'm here because I care and because I give a damn. See ya.
You've got to be intentional about your dreams. Then only you can explore your true creativity.
For me, living intentionally means living with purpose and making sure that the story I create is the story I want to tell my daughters when they grow up.
Because I am